Welcome to QuickPro's Beyond the Basics guide for the Sony a65. This is a great camera that will capture amazing images as well as HD video. We hope you'll enjoy learning more about it with this instructional guide. This guide is meant to be a study tool to be used in connection with and not a replacement of your camera's owner's manual. You can watch it entirely in one sitting or by chapter. Feel free to navigate to any specific chapter you wish to view at any time during the video. Please note that this guide does not cover many of the more basic features and functions of the a65, as those topics are discussed at length in our original guide. Rather, this guide will help you move forward with your knowledge of the camera to help you take the best pictures possible. The a65 features Sony's impressive translucent mirror technology with full-time phase detection autofocus, a 24.3 megapixel image sensor, impressive focus features, customizable buttons and functions, and many other great features and functions that we'll discuss in this guide. Let's get started. You'll only need to press the button once to lock the exposure, rather than press and hold the button, as with the AEL hold function. To cancel the AE lock, simply press the button again. The next two options, Spot AEL hold and Spot AEL toggle, function the same way as the AEL hold and AEL toggle, but these settings will automatically enable the spot metering mode when the function is used. The next option, Object Tracking, will set the function to track a moving subject while continuously focusing. We'll discuss more about Object Tracking later in this guide. Next, there is the AF Lock option. This function is like pressing the shutter button halfway down to focus. And simply press and hold the button you've chosen to customize, and the focus will be locked. Next, there is Aperture Preview. While you're taking pictures, the live view screen or electronic viewfinder may not always show the depth of field or blurriness of the background as it will appear in the final image. With the Aperture Preview feature, you can press and hold the button and the camera will adjust the aperture so you can check the level of background blur before you take the picture. The Shot Result Preview setting will allow you to preview the effect of the DRO setting, the amount of blur, and the shutter speed before taking the picture. The Smart Teleconverter option allows you to use the Smart Teleconverter feature by pressing the button. The Smart Teleconverter will allow you to digitally zoom in to the center of the image. Pressing the button once will zoom the image 1.4 times. Pressing it again will zoom the image 2 times. And pressing the button a third time will exit the Smart Teleconverter and return the image to normal view. Next, there is the Focus Magnifier setting, which allows you to zoom in to check focus prior to taking the picture. After you have selected Focus Magnifier, press the button you customized once to activate the function. Pressing it a second time will magnify the image 5.9 times, and pressing it again will magnify it 11.7 times. You can use the arrow pad to scroll to the desired area of the frame. Now let's take a look at the other custom options for these buttons. Above the default AEL hold, there are the Quality and Image Size options, where you can quickly access the camera's image quality and size settings. Selecting the Picture Effect option will allow you to quickly bring up the camera's picture effects settings, where you can select one of the camera's picture effects to add creativity to your photos. You can choose from a variety of options to add unique effects. The Creative Style option will allow you to quickly bring up the camera's creative style settings. With the creative styles, you can adjust the level of contrast, saturation, and sharpness for your shooting scenario. The DRO Auto HDR option brings up the camera's DRO and HDR settings when the button is pressed. With the DRO option, you can make adjustments to improve the detail and shadow areas of the image. You can select one of 5 levels, with level 5 recovering the most detail. Within this setting, there is also the HDR feature, which allows you to take impressive HDR images in camera. HDR photos are created in camera when 3 images with different exposure settings are recorded and then combined to create a final image with a super realistic range of shadows and highlights. You can choose the auto setting, or you can choose one of the exposure value settings. Choosing the 1.0 exposure value setting will combine 3 images with very little difference in exposure. And choosing the 6.0 setting will combine 3 images with very different exposure settings. The white balance option will allow you to quickly access the camera's white balance settings. And the flash compensation option will bring up the flash compensation setting, where you can adjust the level of intensity of the flash output. The metering mode and ISO options will allow you to quickly adjust those settings when that button is pressed. Next, there is the Smile Shutter option. The Sony a65 has a unique Smile Shutter feature that can detect a smiling face, and upon recognizing one, take the picture without you even pressing the shutter button. You can choose to have the feature on or off. In the on setting, you can choose the level of smile you'd like the camera to detect. Next, there is the face detection option. With this selected, the camera will bring up the face detection settings when the button is pressed. You can choose to have face detection off, on with face registration, and simply on. With the face registration setting, you can register faces in the camera's menu system. Then, when you're taking pictures, the faces that have been registered will have priority for focus. Let's quickly discuss how to register a face. Simply press the menu button and navigate to the 4th custom menu. The bottom option is face registration. Select New Registration and fill the frame with the face you want to register. Now take the picture. When you're taking pictures using the face detection with face registration on function, the camera will focus on this face before it focuses on other faces in the frame. Next, there is the AF area option, which will allow quick access to the camera's AF area settings. Within the AF area settings, you can choose from wide, zone, spot, and local. The next option is the AF mode setting. With this selected, you can choose from AFA or automatic AF, AFS or single shot AF, and AFC or continuous AF. Next, there is the flash mode option. If this option is selected, the flash mode settings can be accessed when the button is pressed. You can choose from flash off, auto, fill flash, slow sync, rear sync, or wireless. Note that some flash modes are available only in certain shooting modes. Next, there is the drive mode option. There are a variety of different drive modes to choose from: single shooting, continuous high and low speed, the 10-second and 2-second self-timers, bracketing options for exposure and white balance, and a remote control option. The final option for customizing the AEL and ISO buttons is exposure compensation, which allows you to bring up the exposure compensation scale, where you can make adjustments to the overall brightness of the image. Having so many different options for customization with these buttons on the Sony a65 will allow you to have fast access to the camera settings that you use the most frequently. In addition to the customizing of the AEL and ISO buttons, you can also customize the preview, focus hold, and smart teleconverter buttons. These buttons can each be customized with more limited options than the previous 3 buttons. Let's take a look now at the preview button customization. The default option is Shot Result Preview, which will allow you to preview the effect of the DRO setting, the amount of blur, and the shutter speed before taking the picture. The other option, Aperture Preview, will allow you to press and hold the button and the camera will adjust the aperture so you can check the level of background blur before you take the picture. The next option that is customizable is the Focus Hold button, which has 2 options. First, you can choose the default Focus Hold option, which will lock the focus while the button is pressed down. The other option, depth of field preview, will allow you to check the depth of field before you take the picture while the focus hold button is pressed. Note that the focus hold button is not actually on the camera body, rather it is located on the barrel of certain Sony lenses. The last customizable button in this menu is the Smart Teleconverter button. The default option, Smart Teleconverter, will allow you to digitally zoom in to the center of an image. The focus magnifier allows you to zoom in to check focus before you take the picture. You have probably heard the term bracketing as you've become more familiar with your digital camera. Let's discuss exactly what it means to use bracketing, as well as the benefits of using this method in your photography. Bracketing is a technique that allows photographers to take one photo but get multiple different versions of that photo. When exposure is bracketed using 3 images, one of the photos will be properly exposed according to the camera's metering system, one will be slightly overexposed, and one will be slightly underexposed. Bracketing has been used by professional photographers since the days of film to ensure good exposure on important shots. With digital cameras today, bracketing options are available not only for exposure but for white balance as well. Note that bracketing options are not available in all of the camera's shooting modes. You'll want to set the mode dial to P, A, S, or M to use the bracketing features. Let's look at how to configure the camera for exposure bracketing. With the A65, it's as easy as setting the drive mode. Simply press the function button and select the drive mode option. Then scroll down to the first bracketing option, continuous bracket. In this bracketing mode, the camera will continuously take pictures, each with varying exposures, while the shutter button is held down. The default setting for the continuous bracket mode is 0.3 EV. This means that the camera will record 3 bracketed images, each with a difference in exposure of only 0.3 EV. With this setting, one image will be properly exposed, the next will be underexposed, and the last image will be overexposed. With 0.3 selected, the variation in exposure values will be small. You can press the right arrow button to view the other settings for the continuous bracket mode. This setting is the 0.7 EV option. With this setting, the camera will record 3 bracketed images, each with a difference in exposure of 0.7 EV. The next exposure bracketing mode is the single bracket mode. Like the continuous bracket mode, there are settings for 0.3 EV and 0.7 EV. When you're using the single bracket mode, you'll need to press the shutter button each time you would like an image to be recorded. So if you'd like the camera to record 3 bracketed shots, you'll need to take 3 separate pictures. The next bracketing mode is for white balance. You can choose from the high and low settings. With white balance bracketing, you'll only need to press the shutter once, and the camera will record 3 images, each with a different white balance. The low setting will record images with slight variations in the white balance, and the high setting will record images with a greater variation. The first image that is recorded will have the currently selected white balance setting. The next image will have more cool blue tones, and the last image will have more warm amber tones. The A65 has a variety of features that will help you take sharp, clear photos. Let's discuss these features now. First, let's talk about the camera's unique object tracking feature, which is enabled by default. To use object tracking, press the center control button and a target frame will appear. Align the target frame with the subject to be tracked and press the center control button again. Now simply press the shutter button to take a picture. Note that object tracking is especially useful for faces. If the face that is being tracked leaves the screen and then returns, the camera will resume focusing on that face. Before we begin discussing the camera's autofocus modes and areas, we'll want to set the object tracking to off. To do this, simply press the function button and navigate to the object tracking option. Here, rotate the control dial to select off. There are 3 different autofocus modes available on the A65. Autofocus modes are available only when the AF switches on the camera body and lens are set to the AF position. To change the camera's focus mode, press the function button and scroll to and select the autofocus mode. You can choose from AFA or automatic autofocus, AFS or single shot autofocus, and AFC, or continuous autofocus. When you're choosing the focus mode, the main thing you'll want to think about is whether or not the subject is in motion. With all of the focus modes, you can focus by pressing the shutter halfway down, or by pressing the AF button. When focus is achieved, the AF point which achieved focus will flash in green, and the focus indicator will appear at the bottom left corner of the LCD. The first autofocus mode, AFC, or continuous autofocus, is best for shooting moving subjects and is for use when the focusing distance keeps changing. Use this mode when you're photographing sporting events, small children, or animals. While you hold the shutter button halfway, the subject will be continuously focused. In the AFA, or automatic AF mode, the focus mode automatically switches from single shot AF to continuous AF if the still subject starts moving. After the subject is focused in the single shot mode, if the subject starts moving, the camera will detect the movement and will change the AF mode automatically to continuous AF. The AFS, or single shot AF, is best suited for stationary subjects. Choose this mode when you're photographing objects or when you're doing portrait work with an older child or adult. In addition to the camera's autofocus modes, you'll also want to be familiar with the autofocus areas. The autofocus areas can be changed when the camera is set to the PASM, continuous priority, or movie shooting modes. To select an autofocus area, press the function button and navigate to the AF area setting. Rotate the control dial to make your selection. The first option is wide. In this mode, the camera will select which of the 19 AF points to use for focus. Next, there is zone. With this option, you simply select one of 3 zones of focus areas and the camera will automatically select the focus area from that zone. To select the zone, press the AF button and use the arrow pad to select the zone. The next focus area option is spot. When this option is selected, the camera will exclusively use the center AF point for focus. The last option is local. With the local option, you can select the exact focus point you'd like the camera to use. To select a focus point, make sure the autofocus area is set to local and use the multi-selector to select the focus point. Your camera also has a manual focus option that can be used at times when it's difficult to get proper focus using autofocus methods. In addition to the focus modes and focus areas, there are 2 other focusing features that we'd like to discuss: focus peaking and the focus magnifier. Let's first discuss the focus peaking option. With the camera's focus peaking feature, you don't have to guess exactly which areas of the frame are in focus, because the in-focus areas will be highlighted with a color of your choosing. To use focus peaking, the camera must first be set to manual focus. Simply switch the focus switch on the lens and camera body to MF. To enable the peaking feature, we'll go to the camera's second custom menu. Navigate to peaking level and select low, mid, or high. For our purposes in this guide, we'll select high. Next, we'll choose the peaking color. The default is white, but the peaking outline may be easier to see if we select either yellow or red. Now all you need to do is rotate the focus ring on the lens and you'll see that there are colored outlines around the specific areas of the frame that are the highest contrast or the most in focus. To change the specific area of focus, simply rotate the focus ring on the lens and watch as the colored outline shifts to a different area of the frame, indicating that the specific area of focus has shifted. Now we simply take the picture. There is one other focusing feature that we'd like to discuss, the focus magnifier. Using the focus magnifier, you'll be able to zoom in to check focus on a specific area of the frame before you take the picture. First, we'll need to enable the focus magnifier feature in the menu system. We'll navigate to the third custom menu and down to the Smart Teleconverter button option. We'll change the setting from Smart Teleconverter to Focus Magnifier. Now we'll simply press the shutter button halfway down to focus. Then we'll press the Smart Teleconverter Focus Magnifier button to activate the focus magnifier. Pressing the button a second time will zoom in to 5.9 times, and pressing the button a third time will zoom to about 11.7 times. You can use the arrow pad to scroll around the image. The Sony a65 has an impressive and sophisticated GPS feature that is built into the camera. Using the GPS will allow you to quickly sort images by location when you're post-processing, as well as record a variety of other information about the location where the photo was taken. There are a few things that you should know about the camera's GPS feature before you begin to use it. First, the GPS will only work when the camera is outdoors and away from tall buildings. Next, the GPS feature may take up to several minutes to obtain the information about your current location. You can reduce the amount of time that it takes the GPS to get the location information by using the GPS Assist Data feature, which we'll discuss in a few moments. Let's take a look at the camera's GPS function now. First, we'll need to turn on the GPS settings in the menu system under the First Setup menu. We'll select GPS Settings. Then we'll set the on-off to on. The next menu item is the GPS Auto Time Correction, which will allow you to maintain the correct time on your camera using the GPS data. Again, we'll select on. The last item in the GPS settings menu is GPS Assist Data. This option displays the dates for which the GPS Assist data is valid. Note that the GPS Assist data should be updated every 30 days. To use the GPS Assist data, you'll need to first install the supplied Sony Picture Motion Browser software. Note that the Picture Motion Browser, or PMB, is compatible only with Windows-based computers. After you've installed the PMB software, you'll need to connect the camera to the computer. First, make sure the camera is switched to off. Now connect the USB cable to the camera's USB connector and the computer. Now switch the camera to on. A PMB dialog box will appear requesting permission to add features to PMB. Click OK. Now open the PMB Launcher application. Here you'll want to click on the GPS on the left side of the window. Now the options will be Map View and GPS Support Tool. Click on GPS Support Tool. Another dialog will pop up. Where it says Drive, select the SLT A65V. Under Details, you will see the dates that the GPS Assist data will be active. You'll simply want to click the Update Now button, and the camera's GPS Assist data will be updated. Before you exit the GPS Support Tool dialog, take a look at the little checkbox toward the bottom of the window. I like to leave that checkbox checked so that the camera's GPS Assist data will be updated every time the camera is connected to the computer. Now you can exit the PBM Launcher application. To disconnect the camera from the computer, you'll want to first make sure the camera is switched to off, then carefully disconnect the USB cable from the camera and the computer. Now, when you take pictures with your a65, the GPS coordinates will be recorded with every image. You'll be able to sort your photos by location using either the supplied Sony software or certain third-party image editing applications. We'll discuss more about using the supplied Sony software later in this guide. When you're using the GPS feature on your a65, you'll see an indicator appear on the LCD with the GPS icon. One of 4 different icons will be displayed. Let's discuss the meanings of each of them. When this icon is displayed, it means that the camera cannot record the location information. Usually this appears when the camera is indoors or near tall buildings. This icon looks similar, but there will be a series of small dots that appear to indicate that the camera is searching for the location information. Any one of these icons will indicate that the camera is able to record the location information. Occasionally you may see this icon. This means that there is a problem with the GPS. If the camera is switched off and then back on again, the problem should resolve. The Sony a65 is capable of recording amazing quality full HD video. Before you get started recording movies with your camera, there are a few things that you'll want to know about movie file formats and record settings. There are 2 basic file formats on the a65, MP4 and AVCHD. The main differences between these file formats are resolution, frame rate, scanning method, and bit rate. It's important to understand a little about each of these options so you can choose the best record settings for your situation. First, let's talk about the resolution options that are available on your camera. You can record movies in 3 different resolutions: 1920 by 1080, 1440 by 1080, and 640 by 480. Each resolution is indicated by the number of pixels that are in the frame. So 1920 by 1080 means that the image is 1920 pixels wide by 1080 pixels tall. This resolution has an aspect ratio of 16 by 9, which means that the ratio of the width to the height is 16 to 9. Movies that are recorded with 640 by 480 are only about 1/3 the width of 1920 by 1080 movies. This resolution option is much smaller and has a 3:4 aspect ratio, which makes it more square in appearance. The 1440 by 1080 resolution option is 1440 pixels wide by 1080 pixels tall. When 1440 by 1080 is played back at a 16:9 aspect ratio, it is stretched side to side. This creates an image the same size as the 1920 by 1080, but has less horizontal resolution because of the pixel stretching. So what's the trade-off? Movies that have more pixels, like the 1920 by 1080, provide a much crisper image, but they also create much larger file sizes. Now let's talk about frame rate. Frame rate refers to the number of images that are recorded per second. The A65 allows you to choose a frame rate of either 60 or 24 frames per second in the AVCHD format, and automatically records roughly 30 frames per second in the MP4 format. A higher frame rate, like 60 frames per second, is great for capturing fast action videos. It allows you to see the action with much better clarity and crisp detail. A slower frame rate, like 24 frames per second, will give your video a softer look. Traditional film movie cameras record at 24 frames per second, and this frame rate has the distinctive cinema look that you would associate with the big screen. Whatever frame rate you choose, you'll want to remember a higher frame rate equals a larger file size. In addition to resolution and frame rate, you should also know a little about scanning methods. There are 2 scanning methods, interlaced and progressive. With interlaced video, each frame of video consists of 2 fields. One field is comprised of the odd horizontal lines in a frame called the odd field or top field, and the other is comprised of the even horizontal lines called the even field or bottom field. These fields alternate to form one complete image. When shooting in 1080 60i or 60 interlaced, the camera is actually generating 30 odd fields and 30 even fields per second. This gives the video a total of 30 complete fields per second. Interlaced video is best suited for viewing on a television. Note that interlaced video may exhibit what is referred to as combing when it is viewed on a computer monitor or other progressive scan devices. Progressive scanning is different than interlaced because it scans the entire picture line by line in sequential order from top to bottom. When you shoot in 1080 60p or 60 progressive, the camera is generating a full 60 frames of video per second. This produces a smoother and more detailed image that is great for viewing fine details. When shooting video, your A65 converts moving images into digital information called bits. The amount of data recorded in a given second is called the bit rate, and it's measured in megabits per second or Mbps. The higher the megabits per second, the more data you're recording, and the higher the quality of your video. While recording at a higher bit rate may produce superior quality video, it also takes up more space on your memory card. A high bit rate really shines when shooting video with a lot of action. When there's a lot of camera or subject movement, the finer details of your video can appear blurry or pixelated when a lower bit rate is used. When you're recording movies with very little fast action, you can use a lower bit rate. Now that you understand more about resolution, frame rates, scanning methods, and bit rates, let's take a closer look at the file formats that are available on your camera. First, there is the AVCHD record setting. This setting offers the highest video quality and is a great choice for videos that will be viewed on a high-definition television or other HD device. Movies recorded with this setting will have a high resolution of 1920 by 1080. The record settings available with this file format are 1080 60 frames per second interlaced with a data rate of 24 megabits per second, 1080 60 frames per second interlaced with a data rate of 17 megabits per second, 1080 60 frames per second progressive with a data rate of 28 megabits per second. Note that this is the highest quality setting on your camera. 1080 24 frames per second progressive with a data rate of 24 megabits per second. And 1080 24 frames per second progressive with a data rate of 19 megabits per second. Both of the 24p modes will give your video a more cinema-like quality. The other record setting is MP4. Movies using this file format are much smaller in size and will take up less space on your memory card, but sacrifice resolution and image quality. There are two options under MP4. The first is 1440 by 1080 pixels with a data rate of 12 megabits per second. This option records at roughly 30 progressive frames per second. The other option is VGA, which is 640 by 480 pixels at 3 megabits per second. This option also records roughly 30 progressive frames per second. Use these formats when movie quality is less important than file size, like when you're shooting video specifically for web upload or email attachments. Included with your A65, there was a CD with tools to help you organize and edit your photos. The software on the CD includes two different applications. First, there is the Picture Motion Browser, or PMB, and there's also the Image Data Converter. The PMB software will allow you to organize your photos and movies, make adjustments to the brightness, crop photos, and much more. Note that PMB is compatible only with Windows PC computers. The Image Data Suite is a great application to use for editing your raw image files. With the Image Data Suite, you can sort and organize your files, adjust the brightness and color, crop your photos, and much more. The Image Data Suite is compatible with both Mac and Windows platforms. To install the supplied Sony software, you'll first need to insert your CD-ROM into your computer's CD or DVD drive. If a dialog pops up asking if you'd like to install the software, just follow the on-screen prompts to install. If no dialog pops up, you'll want to open the window for the CD or DVD drive, launch the install application, and follow the on-screen prompts to install the software. Note that depending on the operating system you're using, the process for installing the software on your computer may vary. After the software installation is finished, a dialog from the PMB software will pop up and prompt you to connect your camera to the computer with a USB cable. This step is not required for the software to work. However, if you connect the camera to the computer, several additional features that are specific to the A65 will be added to the software. To connect the camera to the computer, first make sure that the camera is powered off. Then connect the USB cable to the camera and the computer and power the camera on. After you have connected the camera, 3 different dialogues will pop up. Follow the prompts to confirm the installation process. Then you can power the camera off and disconnect it from the computer. The PMB software should launch automatically. If it does not, you'll need to launch it. To get started using the PMB software, we'll first need to import photos. Click File, Import Media Files. Select the drive you'd like to import photos and videos from and click Next. You can use a memory card reader or you can connect the camera directly to the computer. A new dialog will pop up. Here, there are several options. First, under Import Settings, you can choose to import all files that have not been imported, or you can click the Change button. You'll be given options to choose which files to import. Next, under Import Media Files to, PMB will show the location that the files will be saved on the computer. You can select a different location by clicking the Browse button. By default, PMB will create a new folder with today's date and save the files. You can change this if you'd like. After you've made your selections, click Import and PMB will import your photos and videos. Depending on how many files there are, this process may take several minutes. When PMB is finished importing your files, a dialog will pop up with options. First, you can simply open the imported folder. You can choose to share the files privately, and you can share them publicly. If you click Close, the view will be returned to the calendar view. Since we want to be able to view all the images that were just imported, we'll click the Open Imported Folder option, which will take us to the index view. Let's take a quick look at the options in the PMB. First, there is the menu bar. Here you can select menu items from File, Edit, View, Manipulate, Tools, or Help. The File menu has options for managing your files, importing, creating and deleting folders, and more. Under Edit, you'll find tools to help you edit the files. You can rotate images, give files labels, ratings, and comments, change the date, and more. The View menu is where you can choose how you see the files on the computer screen. You can choose to view the files by calendar or index, with thumbnails or details. You can change the sorting options and more. The Manipulate menu is where you can choose different options for viewing or sharing your photos and videos. You can view your photos as a slideshow, print them, share them privately or publicly, and more. Under Tools, you can update the database, analyze files, and customize the toolbar. The last menu is Help, where you can find answers to your questions about the PMB software, as well as visit the online support. Below the menu bar, there is the toolbar, which has options for viewing, sharing, opening, and editing your photos. At the left side of the screen, there are the View options. This is the index view, and we're viewing all media files. If you have applied labels or ratings to the photos, you can view them with those options, and below that, you can select the folder. The other view option is the calendar view, where you can view files by year and month. At the bottom of the left side of the screen, there are three small buttons. First, there is the Properties button, which will show you the information about the file. Next, there is the Face Search button, which will allow you to search for faces of specific people in photos. The third button is the Map View button, which will allow you to view photos based on the location that was recorded using the GPS feature on your camera. At the bottom right side of the screen, there is a slider bar. If you move the slider to the left, the thumbnails will be smaller and you'll be able to view more of them at one time. If you move the slider to the right, the thumbnails will be larger. Let's take a look at how to do some basic edits to photos using PMB. Just find a photo that you'd like to edit and double-click to open the edit options. On the right side of the screen, there are a variety of options for editing your photos. First, there is red eye reduction, which will allow you to remove red eye from your photos. Next, there is crop. When you crop a photo for printing, you'll want to keep it at the correct aspect ratio. 4:6 prints use a 3:2 aspect ratio. If you change the aspect ratio, you'll also be able to select either landscape or portrait. To crop the image, simply drag the red handles to the area you'd like to crop and then click OK at the bottom right corner. Next, you can use Insert Date to add a date stamp to the photo. You can choose the format, the color, and the position on the photo. When you're finished, click OK. The Autocorrect button will make automatic corrections to the brightness, color, and contrast of the photos. You can also adjust the brightness of the image. You can make adjustments to the dark areas of the image, to the entire image, to the light areas, and you can also adjust the contrast. Click OK to save changes. Saturation will allow you to boost the color in the image, or you can remove all of the color. The tone curve is a great way to make adjustments to the brightness and contrast of your photos. If you click and drag on the middle area of the diagonal line, adjustments will be made to the overall image. If you move the lower part of the line, adjustments will be made to the shadow areas, and if you move the upper part of the line, adjustments will be made to the highlights. To cancel one of the changes you have made, simply click and hold the tiny white square on the line and drag it off the graph. When you're satisfied with your changes, click OK. The Sharpness option is where you can add sharpness to the image. You can apply a very slight sharpening, or you can make the sharpening appear more dramatic. To cancel all of the changes to your photo, you can click the Reset button. The bottom two buttons are the options for saving the changes to your photo. If you click Save, the original image will be overwritten and replaced with the edited version. If you click Save As, you will be able to keep both the original and the edited version. To go back to the index or calendar view, click the Back to Main button at the top left corner of the screen. Now that we've learned a little about using the PMB software, let's talk about the image data converter, which will allow you to edit and sort your raw image files. The image data converter software should have installed when the PMB software was installed. If you have not installed the Image Data Converter application, you'll want to do that now. First, you'll want to launch the Image Data Converter application. Once it has opened, you'll see a folder list on the left side of the screen. This list makes it easy to find the folder where your images are saved. After you've located the folder you'd like to work with, simply select a photo. Below each image, you'll see important information: the file name, the date and time that the photo was taken, the camera model, the lens, and the exposure settings are all listed. To view even more information about the image, click on the Image Properties button at the top of the screen. There are two different view options in Image Data Converter. You can change the view by clicking on the display buttons at the top right of the screen. The default option will display all the photos as thumbnails on a grid, and the preview display will show the selected image in a large window with thumbnails below. You can scroll to view the additional thumbnails. For the next section of the guide, we'll switch back to the thumbnail display. When you're choosing which photos to edit, which ones to delete, and which ones to print, you may find that it is useful to assign a star rating or a color label. Then you can easily and quickly view images based on the ratings and labels that have been applied. Applying a star rating is easy. Below each photo, you'll notice 5 small gray dots. If you click on the leftmost dot, the photo will be given a 1-star rating. And if you click on the rightmost dot, the photo will be given a 5-star rating. To remove a star rating, click on the leftmost star either once or twice, depending on what rating the photo was given originally. After you've applied ratings to multiple images, you can sort them based on those ratings using the filter at the top left corner of the window. There are a variety of options that you can choose from. You can choose any number of stars, and you can view only the photos that are unrated or have 0 stars. To cancel a filter, click the Clear button. Another way that you can sort photos is with the color labels. Below each image, next to the star rating, you'll see 3 different color squares. Clicking on one of the squares will apply that color label to the image. You can give images just 1 color label, or you can have 2 or 3. After you've applied color labels to the photos, you can sort them using the color filters at the top of the screen. Clicking on one of the colors will show only photos that have that label applied, or you can click on 2 colors, or even all 3. To cancel the filter, just click the color filter button again, or you can click the Clear button. To cancel a color label on an image, just click the color label again. Now let's take a look at how to apply some basic edits to your raw photos. Select the photo or photos that you'd like to edit and click the Raw Edit button at the top left corner of the screen. If you've selected multiple images to edit, note that you can click on any one of the image tabs at the bottom of the screen to open that image for editing. Now let's look at the options for making changes to your photos, which are located on the right side of the screen. To view the adjustment options for a setting, click the small black triangle to the left of the setting. First, there is brightness. Using this slider, you can make adjustments to overall brightness of the image. Next, there is white balance. You can change the white balance to one of the in-camera settings, and you can make manual adjustments using the color temperature and color correction options. If you select Specify Gray Point, you can select an area of the image as a neutral gray to use as a custom white balance reference point. You can also change the creative style to any one of the camera's built-in creative styles. The contrast setting will allow you to make changes to the overall contrast of the image. You can use the D-Range Optimizer option to make adjustments to the detail in the shadow and highlight areas of the image. You can select Auto or Manual. In the Manual option, you can choose the amount for the overall image, or you can also make adjustments specifically to the highlights and shadows. The Highlight Color Distortion Reduction option will allow you to choose either Standard or Advanced. In the color setting, you can adjust the hue and the saturation of the overall image. The Shading Compensation option will allow you to make adjustments to enhance or reduce the vignetting effect that is caused by some lenses. Use the Central Radius and Central Strength settings to make adjustments to the central part of the image, and use the Peripheral Strength to make adjustments to the corner areas. Under Sharpness, you can make adjustments to the overall amount of sharpening, as well as the overshoot, undershoot, and threshold. Under Noise Reduction, you can select Off, Auto, or Manual. If you select Manual, you'll have control over the amount, as well as the color noise reduction and the edge noise reduction. The tone curve in the image data converter functions in much the same way as the tone curve in the PMB. To make adjustments to the overall tone of the image, you'll want to click and drag on the middle area of the diagonal line. Dragging the line upward will brighten the image, and dragging it downward will darken the overall image. To make adjustments to the shadow areas, you can click and drag the lower part of the line, and to adjust the highlight areas, you can click and drag the upper part of the line. The last item we'll discuss is display control. In display control, you can choose to have the application warn you if tones and colors are going to be clipped or out of gamut, and you can also choose to display a 16:9 area. After you've finished making adjustments to your images, you'll want to save them as JPEGs for printing. To do this, select the photo you'd like to save and click on File, and then Output. Here you can select the location where you'd like the JPEG file to be saved, as well as the compression level and the color space. Note that the sRGB color space is the standard for most photo labs. Now click Save. To go back to the View screen, click the View Mode button at the top left corner. The A65 has several great features that you can customize to your liking. Let's talk about a few of them now, starting with white balance fine-tuning. The white balance settings on the A65 are intuitive and make it easy to get the right color tones in your photos. To make adjustments to a white balance setting, simply press the Function button and select White Balance. Now, simply scroll to one of the options. To make adjustments, press the right arrow button to bring up the fine-tuning scale. Moving the indicator up toward the G will increase the green tones in the image. Moving the indicator to the right will increase the amber tones. Moving the indicator down toward the M will increase the magenta tones, and moving the indicator to the left will increase the blue tones in the image. Another feature we'd like to discuss is the grid line option, which will help you when you're composing your photos. The grid line feature can be enabled in the camera's second custom menu under Grid Line. By default, Grid Line is set to off, but the other options include Rule of Thirds Grid Line, Square Grid Line, and Diagonal plus Square Grid. The Rule of Thirds grid is great for helping you apply the Rule of Thirds in your composition. The use of this common composition rule can create images with strong visual interest by placing the focal point at the intersection of the grid lines. The square grid is great for when you're photographing landscapes or architecture and you'd like to make sure that the subject appears level in the frame. With the square grid, you can align the horizon or subject with the grid to check for an even level. The last option is the diagonal plus square grid. With this option, you can use the square grid as we just discussed, but you'll also have the ability to use the diagonal lines to help you create more dynamic and energetic compositions. Now let's talk a moment about the A65's in-camera lens compensation features. You can correct for shading, chromatic aberration, and lens distortion. Note that the lens compensation features must be in effect before the photo is taken. The lens compensation settings are located in the fourth custom menu. First, there is shading. Some lenses may darken the edges and corners of an image. If the shading setting is active, the camera will compensate to reduce the intensity of the shaded edges and corners. By default, the shading compensation is set to auto. If you do not want to have the camera compensate for shading, you can select off. The next option is lens compensation chromatic aberration. Some lenses may cause the edges of high contrast areas in an image to have a color fringe. If the chromatic aberration setting is active, the camera will compensate for the color fringe to help the colors be more accurate. By default, the chromatic aberration compensation is set to auto. If you do not want to have the camera compensate for chromatic aberration, you can select off. The last option for lens compensation is distortion. Some lenses may have a tendency to make an image either appear bloated or pinched. If the lens distortion compensation is active, the camera will compensate for the lens distortion. By default, the lens distortion compensation is set to off. If you'd like to enable compensation for lens distortion, you can select auto. Your Sony a65 can record image files in two different file types, RAW and JPEG. Both file types have benefits and drawbacks to consider. Let's talk a little about these two image file types. There are several important things to know about RAW files. First, they are not actually image files. They are actually the raw data saved to the memory card directly from the image sensor. Next, RAW files are uncompressed, meaning that the file sizes are considerably larger than those of compressed files. RAW files have a much broader range of tones. Shadow and highlight areas have more detail than JPEG files. Also, you can make extensive edits to a RAW file without losing data or image quality. And finally, RAW files appear flatter with less color and contrast and must be processed on the computer before they're printed. JPEG files, however, are very different from RAW files. JPEG files are a standard image file format that can be read by any image software. They are compressed, which means that not all of the image data is actually saved. Because they're compressed, JPEGs are much smaller in file size. JPEGs have a more narrow range of shadows and highlights and will lose some image data each time they're edited. Finally, JPEG files are processed by your camera and are able to be printed directly from the memory card. Because JPEG images require less time when editing on the computer, I use a high-quality JPEG setting for everyday picture taking and snapshots. If I know ahead of time that I'm going to be extensively editing my images, I'll choose the RAW plus JPEG format. Let's take a look now at how to choose the image size and quality settings on the a65. First, we'll press the menu button and make sure that we're in the first recording menu, indicated by a camera icon with the number 1 highlighted. The top option, Image Size, is where you can choose the number of megapixels you'd like the camera to use when recording images. The first option, Large, will use all 24 megapixels. The second option, Medium, will use 12 megapixels, and the last option, Small, will record the images using 6 megapixels. Unless I know that I will only be using the images for emailing or posting online, I like to keep the camera set to the large 24 megapixel setting. Let's also take a look at the image quality options. There are 4 different options. First, there is RAW. With this setting, the camera will record 1 RAW file. The next option, RAW and JPEG, will record a RAW image file in addition to a JPEG file. There are also 2 JPEG options, Fine and Standard. The difference between the JPEG options is the level of compression. The Fine option will have the least amount of compression and produce a higher quality image. The Standard option will have more compression, slightly lower quality, and a smaller file size. With the Sony a65, you will also have control over how the image files are named and saved to the memory card. Let's take a look at these options in the Memory Card Tool menu. The second item in the Memory Card Tool menu is File Number. There are 2 options, Series and Reset. When Series is selected, the camera will record images with sequential file numbers, regardless of whether the memory card is replaced or reformatted. The sequential numbers will continue until they reach 9,999, at which time the sequential numbering will start over again. When Reset is selected, the camera will record image files starting with 0001. The numbering will start over any time that the memory card is replaced, the memory card is reformatted, all the images in a folder are deleted, or when the folder format is changed. You also have control over the way that the camera names the folders where the images are stored. To change the folder name structure, navigate to the folder name option in the Memory Card Tool menu. There are 2 options, Standard Form and Date Form. When the Standard Form option is selected, the folder name will appear with the folder number first, followed by this suffix, which creates the folder name. You can also select the folder where you'd like images to be saved. This is especially useful if you're shooting multiple events in one day, or if you're on a vacation and you'd like to save different events and activities in different folders. To save images from a specific event in a different folder, you'll first need to create a new folder on the memory card. In the Memory Card Tool menu, simply select New Folder. When the dialog appears to let you know that the folder was created, select OK. Now you can scroll up to the Select Recording Folder option, and you'll be able to choose the folder where you'd like to have the images saved. Now that we have discussed managing the image files in the camera and memory card, let's talk a little about how to archive and back up these files for future use and safekeeping. It's important to always have your files saved in at least 2 different locations. There are many ways that you can back up your files, and we'll discuss a few of them here, including CDs and DVDs, external and redundant hard drive systems, and online backup services. Regardless of which methods of backup you choose, you'll want to have a regular system for backing up your files. It's a good idea to create backups at the same time as you download the files from the camera's memory card for post-processing. Remember to create backups in 2 different locations in addition to your regular working hard drive. You'll also want to create backups of your processed images at set times each day, week, or month, depending on how frequently you're updating or adding the files to your computer. The most affordable way to create a backup of your files is to burn them to CDs or DVDs. It's always a good idea to make multiple copies of each CD or DVD, as well as have at least one additional backup method. There are a few things to know about using CDs or DVDs to archive your images. Although the topic is debatable, our research found that many low-quality writable CDs or DVDs have an average lifespan of about 15 years when properly stored and cared for. If you choose to use these discs, you'll want to make sure that you not only have multiple backups of each disc, but you'll also want to periodically check the discs for signs of deterioration or discoloration. There are several companies that use gold and silver in the manufacture of their discs to ensure the archival quality. These discs are more costly than their lower quality counterparts, but they will normally have a lifespan of anywhere from 100 to 300 years. Be sure to look for the manufacturer's guarantee when shopping for silver or gold CDs or DVDs. Although these discs are more archival, you'll still want to make sure that you have multiple copies of each disc. Regardless of which type of CD or DVD you use to back up your image files, you'll want to follow a few simple rules to help your discs last as long as possible. First, always check the disc to verify that the contents have been successfully recorded before placing it in storage. Always handle the discs with care, using only the outer edges or center hole. Also, use only non-solvent permanent marker on the disc and only write on the inner hub area. Finally, you also want to make sure that discs are stored upright in jewel cases or paper sleeves in a cool, dry place. In addition to having a CD or DVD backup of your files, it's also a good idea to have the files saved using another method. External hard drives have become increasingly affordable and are available in a variety of capacities. When you use an external hard drive for backup purposes, you'll want to use a different hard drive for everyday working use to preserve the integrity of the backup drive. Another option for backing up your image files is a redundant hard drive or RAID system. These systems vary in size, speed, and cost, but can be an effective backup method. Let's discuss how these systems work. Inside this box, there are 4 hard drives. Some systems have 2 hard drives, others have 4 or more. Each of the hard drives can hold the exact same data. This way, when one of the drives fails, the other drive will still have all of the data, and the bad drive can easily be replaced or repopulated with the data from the good drive. The system is connected to a computer using a standard USB cable or through a network. Some of these systems are very user-friendly and easy to install. Others may require the assistance of your local computer service technician. Again, it's a good idea to have your files saved using at least one additional method. One other way to keep a backup of your files is through an online backup service. These services vary not only in cost, but in the way that the backups are managed. Most of these services will require that you install a piece of software on your computer. At a set time each day, week, or month, the software will back up your files via the internet to a remote server. One of the advantages of using an online backup service is that in case of a fire or other natural disaster, your files will be safe at an off-site location. Many photographers keep external hard drives, CDs, or DVDs in addition to using an online backup service. With Sony's wide array of lenses, flash units, and other accessories like multi-vertical grips and microphones, you'll be able to take amazing photos and video and further build your photography skills. Please note that using some third-party accessories, particularly flash units and multi-power packs, may cause damage to your camera. You'll want to check with your authorized Sony dealer or service representative for more information about the use of third-party accessories. Sony has produced many lenses and types of lenses since they began producing DSLR cameras. You can also use Minolta legacy lenses on your a65. Any Sony or Minolta A-mount lens will fit your Sony a65 camera. However, there are a few important things to know and remember if you're considering using legacy Minolta lenses on your a65. First, lenses that are part of the Minolta Vectus line are not compatible with your a65 and will cause damage to the camera. If you have questions about a lens, consult an authorized Sony representative. Second, Minolta offered a line of lenses that were referred to as Rocore lenses. These lenses are compatible with your a65, but only with the use of an adapter. Minolta A-mount lenses that were introduced in 1985 are compatible with the Sony a65. You may find that some features on some of these lenses are not functional when used with the Sony Alpha camera, but in general, the Minolta A-mount lenses will autofocus and operate well on a Sony DSLR SLT camera. The lenses produced by Sony today are all A-mount lenses, and there are a variety of different technologies and references. But many lenses that are commonly used on Alpha DSLR and SLT cameras are referred to as either SSM or SAM lenses. SSM stands for Supersonic Wave Motor. The SSM lenses have advanced direct drive motors that are capable of very fast response and extremely quiet autofocus operation. These lenses have great focusing precision, and you can directly switch to manual focus because the focus ring does not rotate when the lens is autofocusing. SAM stands for Smooth Autofocus Motor, which is another type of lens motor. These lenses are also fast to focus, but they may not be as quiet as the SSM lenses. Now that we've discussed a little about lens compatibility, let's discuss choosing a lens. With the wide variety of Sony lenses available, it can sometimes seem overwhelming to know what lens or lenses will help you with the type of photography you're doing. Let's first talk a little about lenses and apertures. When shopping for a lens, you will notice that all lenses have a maximum aperture, or f-stop. Smaller numbers like f1.4 and f2.8 are considered to be faster lenses because they allow a lot of light into the camera. If your lens has a range of apertures, note that the largest aperture can be used only at the widest focal length. This is how the aperture or aperture range is indicated on a lens barrel. The maximum aperture of the lens is important to keep in mind when you're shopping for a lens, especially if you're planning on doing photography in low light conditions, action or sports photography, or if you're looking to create photos with a very shallow depth of field. After the maximum aperture of the lens, the next thing that you'll need to consider is the focal length. Sony lenses are available in a wide range of focal lengths, each with its own benefits and uses. The focal length on a lens is the second number in the series of numbers on the lens barrel, and it's measured in millimeters. This lens, for instance, is an 18 to 55 millimeter lens, or the focal length range is from 18 millimeters to 55 millimeters. Lenses that have a range of focal lengths like this 18 to 55 millimeter are considered zoom lenses. Zoom lenses have the ability to get closer or farther away from the subject without actually ever moving the camera. Lenses that have only one focal length, like this 35 millimeter 1.8, are prime lenses. Prime lenses do not have zooming capability, but many professional photographers prefer them, particularly for portraits because of the great clarity they offer. With this understanding of focal lengths in millimeters, we can discuss some of the different ranges of focal lengths, as well as the lens categories that different focal lengths fall into. Lenses that are less than 50 millimeters are considered to be wide-angle lenses, so the 18 to 55 that we just talked about could fall into the wide-angle range because it goes down to 18 millimeters. Wide-angle lenses are great for landscape shots as well as situations where space is limited and you want to include as much of a scene as possible. Mid-range lenses have between 50 and 85 millimeters. This range of focal lengths is great for family snapshots, portraits, and vacations. The 18 to 55 millimeter lens that came with this a65 also falls into the mid-range category. These lenses are often referred to as walk-around lenses because they are so versatile and can be used for a variety of subjects and shooting scenarios. Telephoto lenses are lenses with over 85 millimeters and are great for getting closer to your subject. Sports and wildlife photographers use telephoto lenses extensively to zoom in on the subject. Telephoto lenses are also great for getting amazing close-up shots of flowers or other small objects. Now that we've discussed lenses, let's talk a little about other valuable accessories for your Sony a65, the optional flash unit, microphone, and remote commander. Sony flash units are intuitive, easy to use, and will provide you with greater freedom and flexibility regardless of the ambient light that you're working with. Although the a65 has a powerful and effective built-in flash unit, there are many scenarios when the use of an optional Sony external flash unit will improve your photos. The a65 has a built-in microphone for movie recording. However, on occasion, the sound that is recorded through this built-in microphone may include noise from the camera's focusing mechanisms or vibration reduction. The use of Sony's compact stereo microphone will prevent this type of additional noise from being recorded. The last accessory that we'll discuss is the remote commander. With this remote, you'll be able to take pictures without touching the camera. This is great for eliminating camera shake at very slow shutter speeds. Your Sony a65 is a sophisticated camera and will need some basic care and maintenance to keep it in good working condition. The following suggestions are from QuickPro Camera Guides. Please consult your local Sony representative for complete care and maintenance recommendations. Here are some tips for storing your camera. First, when the camera will be stored for long periods of time, rotate the LCD to face toward the camera body. This will help it stay clean and free of dust, as well as provide additional protection for the LCD screen. Also, remove the battery when the camera will be stored. Next, make sure that the storage location is cool and dry. Avoid exposing the camera to temperatures above 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Avoid storing the camera in areas with high humidity, near televisions, radios, or other equipment that produces strong electromagnetic fields. When you're using the camera regularly, you'll want to protect it from several environmental elements that could cause damage. The camera should stay dry, and contact with dust or sand should be avoided. You'll also want to avoid subjecting the camera to sudden changes in temperature. If the camera is cold and it's suddenly brought into a warm environment, condensation or moisture can build up on the camera's internal components. Also, leaving the lens pointed at the sun will cause damage to the camera's image sensor. Finally, make sure that the camera is turned off before you remove the battery, memory card, change lenses, connect it to a computer, or attach any accessory to the accessory shoe. You'll want to consult your owner's manual for a complete list of care techniques and cautions. Let's talk a little now about ways to properly clean the camera without damaging it. To remove dust or lint from the camera body, a blower is a good tool to have on hand. Using this tool, you can also clean the lens, viewfinder, and mirror. To further clean the camera body, you can use a soft, dry cloth. Do not use alcohol or any other harsh chemicals. If the camera has been used at a beach, you can dampen a cloth with distilled water to clean the camera body. After the blower tool has been used to remove any dust and lint, you can use a soft cloth with a small amount of lens cleaner to gently clean the lens, monitor, and viewfinder. Your a65 has a feature that will automatically clean the image sensor. First, you'll want to make sure that the battery is fully charged, then navigate to the second setup menu and select Cleaning Mode. Select Enter and press the multi-selector to confirm. The image sensor will vibrate briefly to eliminate dust and debris, and the camera will prompt you to turn the camera off. You can also clean your image sensor manually. Step-by-step instructions are available in your camera's owner's manual. When cleaning the image sensor, great care should be taken, as damage to the image sensor or mirror can easily occur. QuickPro suggests that you contact a Sony authorized service representative for assistance in cleaning the image sensor or other internal camera components. We hope you've enjoyed learning more about your Sony a65. We know this new information will give you enough confidence and know-how to take your photography skills to new levels. Remember, you can refer back to any section of this guide at any time. Watch for more QuickPro guides on newly released cameras. Thanks for watching.